All right, so now we can actually start writing some failing tests. And to do that, I'm just actually going to copy this describe block here. And I'm going to change it up. So I'm going to, instead of saying can sign and verify tokens, I'm going to say can create valid tokens for users from username. And then we're going to say test valid tokens are created for non-admin users. And we're going to do a few things. We're going to say const token equal tokens dot create user JWT, and we'll say username is test and is admin is false. And so we'll say const let's say decoded equals JWT dot verify token with the secret key, and we will expect the decoded token to equal let's just take the same stuff up here. We have the issued at, we have the expires, and we also want the username, which should be test, and is admin should be false. Cool. Then, actually, I'm just going to, since all of these are going to look pretty similar, let's just copy this 2 more times. Now, in the second one, we're going to say valid tokens are created for admin users. And we're going to change this is admin from false to true. And we're going to make sure that it's true here also. Simple enough. And that's why copy paste is magical. Then, at the bottom, the last test, we're going to say test or tokens set the is admin value to false by default. Just because we want to make sure that that's the case. And so if we don't pass in the is admin, we want to make sure that it is false by default. And so we can keep everything else the same. Now, let's run this test, and let's hope that we have 3 failing tests. So I'll say npm run test utils or npm test -- tokens.test.js or whatever your system calls for. Run them, and we see 3 failing tests, 1 test failing, exactly what we were hoping for. Now, let's take a look at what's failing here. Oh, cool. And this is great, because it tells us exactly why. The reason is that we're using email to create tokens at the moment in our create user JWT function. We discussed in the last series a little bit about how switching to username would be a better approach, since it's less sensitive data to keep in a token, and we're not encrypting these tokens, we're just encoding them. So we should probably be using username anyway, and that's what we're trying to refactor here. And our tests are confirming that, hey, you're using email, not username, so they're failing. And getting these tests to pass is actually a pretty simple change. But the problem is that it'll have ripple effects around the rest of our application. So let's update the tokens.js file and use username instead of email. Let's say username is user.username. So we have our red so far, and we're working to the green. So a simple change, and then we run it again, and we hope that they all pass. And they do. Bam. But this is misleading. The tests we've written are passing, but our application is now pretty much completely broken. And this highlights why it's important to test the majority of our application, in case we need to make any huge changes, in case we need to refactor things like we are right now. Now, we don't actually know this application is broken because our tests aren't failing all over the place, but if we had them in place, they would be failing. How do I know that? Well, I know that a number of pieces depend on the user's decoded token having an email attribute instead of a username attribute. Now, we could just add both of those things to the token here. We could just add email and username, but that would defeat the purpose of not storing sensitive data in the user JWT. Because again, if we look at this right here, you can see that we're expecting this decoded token to have an email. And so we're going to have to change that. And in fact, if we look at the users table, it doesn't even have a username field here. It has email, but no username. So we're going to need to fix that and a couple other things. But I think that's enough for now. Let's commit our work and move on to the next section. Git status, git add, git commit, refactored JWT tokens for username instead of email. Cool.